Hey, thank you so much. Well, I must say it's a hard act to follow behind Ian and the last presentation of the day, but I'll try to roll through this and hopefully, it is like a storytelling and I'm excited about that for the Tongass. So first I wanted to set the stage here with a little bit of information and about the importance of the Tongass. Let's see if I can share this. Salmon fact sheet. So what it comes down to is the Tongass is important for the production of salmon. 75% of Southeast Alaska commercial salmon catch is produced by the Tongass rivers, lakes, and streams, translating to 40 million salmon and a dockside value of over $68 million annually. That's a pretty substantial chunk. When it comes down to, our 5,000 miles of road network across the forest, we're really focused in on dealing with those problematic road stream crossings. Right now, our latest inventory has us about 182 crossings that are blocking 64 miles of anadromous fish habitat on the Tongass. And really that doesn't include the resident fish streams in which we have problematic crossings as well, but also realize that the Tongass road systems in most cases are old. These were roads that were built in the original timber harvest back in the 50s and 60s. And so we're going to start to see some failures out there. And, I feel like we've got a pretty solid plan to be able to address that, given the where we've come from across the forest. So let me go back and stop sharing that and get to the presentation. I'm gonna stop my audio and
what? The one that was open.
Share this screen. Hopefully, let me know if you can see that screen sharing.
Yeah, I see your PowerPoint, and I think if you press, yep, perfect. There's your
Okay,
slide.
excellent. All right. Yeah, and just let me know if there's anything that comes up that you guys would like addressed on the fly too. I'm happy to approach that. So this presentation really provides a summary of the Tongass remediation efforts and highlights an assortment of structural crossing improvements, summarizing some of the outcomes and really emphasizing the value of partnerships. Just realize the forest has been a leader in aquatic organism passage for over 30 years now. This is just a quick summary of our aquatic organism passage remediation efforts. We have remediated a total of 654 red crossings since 1998, with a total implementation investment of about $27.5 million. And of those 654 red crossings remediated, 263 unique stream crossings, all of which are culvert replacements, have been monitored in greater detail to date. I think folks have kind of defined some of the terminology we've been throwing around this week, but black crossings are defined as those crossings where additional measurements are necessary. But all those that are noted in the 2020 section are assumed to be green since they're all stream simulation or hydraulic designed, but we haven't had a chance to monitor them yet, thanks to COVID. So as of 2021, 80% of those culverts are consistent with state of Alaska fish passage standards and provide unimpeded juvenile and adult passage. 7% are considered gray and require more comprehensive analysis, and 13% are considered red and assumed not to provide adequate passage at all desired stream flows. Overall, you can see our budget for AOP remediation has been in decline, and we're so excited to see what the new initiatives, including the infrastructure funding, brings to Southeast Alaska. And of course, we're ever so thankful for the partnerships and stakeholder engagement surrounding fish passage fragmentation, remediation in Southeast Alaska. And of course, as Ian and others put it today, we're able to achieve way more together and wouldn't be where we are today without that support. One note on this particular chart is that huge influx in removed structures spanning from about 2007 to 2014. The Tongass did a pretty extensive access and travel management planning effort during that time, and it was during a time when the roads budgets were going down. So it was decision making to do a lot of road storage and even some decommissioning of roads during that time. So that's why we were able to tackle so many of those removals through that process. All right, this shows design types and fish passage status of those monitored culverts that I was talking about. A few additional terminology definitions. I think yellow's been defined as conditions are assumed to be adequate. However, more frequent monitoring is required. It's really surrounding whether there's sufficient bed load being retained in those structures. And then the simplified stream simulation design. I want to fill you in on what that is. It's an experimental, potentially cost-effective method of installing culverts in a manner that over time are expected to provide conditions in the culvert that closely mimic and retain natural stream characteristics. And it's achieved by sufficiently sizing and countersinking that culvert and then staging bed load material or even inputting a little bit inside that stage material to mobilize at high flows into the culvert known as surcharge. And then at high flows, the stage material and then additional native bed load material becomes deposited within the culvert and fish passage conditions are achieved. Our monitoring has helped inform the level of success and as well as future modifications. And those simplified stream simulation designed crossings were installed between 2012 and 2015. So 55% of those 263 monitored culverts were stream simulation designs. 11% were installed using that simplified method. 18% utilized the no slope design. You can see that's been pretty effective. 2% were hydraulic designed or baffled culverts, and 11% were installed without discernible fish passage considerations, with 3% being retrofitted. So from here, I'll present a suite of crossing remediation projects, highlighting, again, the value of partnerships, a little bit about design aspects and key outcomes. All right, so this first site on the Wrangell Ranger District is a pretty cool one. It's one of our older sites. It's a 68-inch by 95-inch pipe arch stream simulation design, which replaced an 84-inch round culvert on Wrangell Island, installed in 2003 and monitored again in 2018. That crossing is on an anadromous stream with coho, cutthroat trout, and even Western brook lamprey, as you can see in that lower right photo, documented at the culvert in 2018. This crossing is green for passage with the photo on the bottom left taken in 2018. And you can see the step pools and constructed banks within the culvert holding tight 15 years later. The next site is on Prince of Wales Island. In 2016, the Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, Habitat Restoration Program, Trout Unlimited, the Nature Conservancy and Southeast Alaska Fish Habitat Partnership teamed up to develop a Tongass Top 5 supported by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, of which we were able to highlight the Tongass fish habitat fragmentation issues and also really develop momentum again on remediation efforts, beginning with survey and design funds for a suite of anadromous sites, and then eventual construction funding in 2019 through U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Fish Passage Program. That construction funding covered 3 replacements in Game Creek watershed in Hoonah, and also an additional culvert removal in Yakutat's Lost River watershed. The contract ready design for this particular Prince of Wales Island Steelhead Creek crossing was completed in 2018 via contract using that Tongass Top 5 funding, and called for an 18-foot by 7'8" structural plate arch on precast concrete footings to replace a 72-inch undersized culvert acting as a gradient barrier on a Class 1 stream, which contained coho, cutthroat trout, dolly varden, and steelhead, with 0.4 miles of anadromous and an additional 1.2 miles of resident fish habitat upstream. And then construction funds for the site came from the 2019 USDA NRCS Joint Chiefs Landscape Restoration Partnership. Construction was completed in summer 2020 by the Heidelberg Cooperative Association under a Forest Road Cooperative Agreement. The project resulted in unimpeded fish access and a more climate resilient crossing. You can see the design. I pulled a piece out in the lower left corner. The design called for 3 weirs, 3 ribs within the crossing, and then a weir both upstream and downstream of the crossing. And you can note in that middle picture, just a little bit of minor rock movement in the middle of the upstream weir, which highlights the criticality of placement of weir rocks. So they're stacked on the footer rocks and partially embedded into the channel material. This site overall weathered the big fall 2020 Prince of Wales storm event quite well and looks great overall, and really just emphasizes the value of partnerships. This crossing, Logjam Creek design, was completed in early 2019 through the Tongass Top 5 initiative. The contract ready design prescribed a stream simulation 13-foot by 15-foot 1 structural plate arch placed on concrete footings to improve passage, where a 72-inch culvert constricted the channel. Remediation allows fish unimpeded access to 0.67 miles of anadromous habitat and additional 0.04 miles of resident fish habitat. Let's see, the crossing and bed materials were placed at 3% gradient. The design called for 4 rock weirs, 2 outside, 2 inside, 4 rock ribs, some channel rock banks throughout the entire crossing, isolated boulders, and stream simulation rock throughout. Construction was contracted in 2021 using a combination of that USDA NRCS Joint Chiefs Landscape Restoration Partnership funding, and also joined up with Forest Service regular program funds. The contractor, this was a pretty cool site. I believe the COR might be on this call, so please correct me if I get something wrong. The contractor was able to pour the footings without diversion of flow, which was pretty sweet, and then later shifted over to a diversion pipe while constructing the channel and banks. Overall, it was a quick construction project resulting in great improvements to fish passage and greater climate resiliency. Total cost of this particular site was $222,000. This Prince of Wales Staney Creek site is a resident fish crossing with dolly varden presence and 0.22 miles of fish habitat upstream. This is located west of the east of the Middle Fork Staney Creek, and Staney Creek is one of the Tongass's nationally designated priority watersheds. The original 48-inch culvert crossing was red due to channel constriction and gradient, and it was also rusted through, so pretty much a no-brainer need for replacement. Survey and design services were contracted out in 2018 with a contract ready package delivered in 2019. And then the stream simulation design incorporated an 11-foot by 3'6" structural plate arch on precast concrete footings. You can see the design called for 2 ribs and 1 weir within the culvert, and then a weir upstream and downstream with stream bed construction and culvert placement at 3.8%. Replacement was completed via a contract in 2020 to the tune of about $144,000. And these are 2021 photos. You can see a portion of the outlet area weir was compromised during the big fall 2020 storm event. Just again, reiterating that it's super critical to place the weir rocks so they're stacked against the footer rocks and partially embedded in other stream channel material. Overall, the site's maintained its stream bed sediments and survived the big storm and looks great. And yet another, as we get into bridges, another Tongass top 5 site. This Maple Creek design. Maple Creek is also on Prince of Wales Island, which is sort of the mecca for AOP work. It was completed in 2019, calling for a 40-foot glulam bridge to replace the 60-inch culvert, which constricted the channel. Construction funds came from forest retained receipts, and contracted construction was completed in summer 2020. This was about $144,000 as well, and the Forest Service provided the glulam bridge. Improvements overall resulted in unimpeded access to 0.77 miles of anadromous and 0.38 additional miles of resident fish habitat. Pretty easy on the eyes, finished product. Of course, these are of the most beneficial for fish. All right, so moving on and up the Tongass a little bit. The Forest Service partnered with the Federal Highway Administration, Fish and Wildlife Service, and Southeast Alaska Watershed Coalition through the Federal Lands Access Program, known as FLAP, to renovate the Lena Beach Recreation Area in 2018. This particular component of the larger project dealt with restoration of Picnic Creek. The removal of that failing, horrible concrete fish ladder, which was sort of, band-aiding the fact that fish couldn't make it up to the crossing, was the reason why that fish ladder was placed there. And the culvert and the restoration of Picnic Creek downstream of the new bridge now provides easier passage for spawning pink and coho salmon. Super positive passage results based on fish monitoring completed by the Juneau District. Video weir monitoring estimated almost 2,000 pink salmon passing upstream of the crossing in 2021 versus 20 pink salmon counted in 2017, the year prior to restoration. And then moving back down to Wrangell Ranger District. This is an example of one of the simplified stream simulation designs. This Wrangell project site displays a 90-inch by 60-inch pipe arch, which replaced a 36-inch pipe on a Class 1 stream with coho and cutthroat trout present, with 0.4 miles of Class 1 and 2 habitat upstream. This in-house design called for surcharged stream bed, 6-inch minus materials placed upstream of the crossing, and also about 6 linear feet from each end of the culvert to a depth of 1 foot as shown in the drawing, with the surcharge material intended to fill the culvert over time along with native bed material. While the site was initially considered green for passage at first monitoring, the crossing was determined to be red starting 2017. It had 100% sediment coverage in 14 and 15, but subsequently lost that bed load in the inlet to midsection and was down to about 80% overall coverage in 2018. Because it was not backwatered in that area without bed load, the crossing is determined to be red because the culvert is placed at 3.6% gradient and has a steep inlet approach to it. That fine surcharge material mobilized downstream into the lower portion of the culvert and then downstream and out. Past that, the upper left photo was taken in 2014, the fall right after construction. You can see that general area of surcharge material. And then note the lack of bed load at the inlet of the culvert in 2018 in that lower right photo. The lower left is the culvert barrel looking upstream in 2017. Later simplified site designs were modified to address that limited success of surcharge material and also to consider putting large ribs and weir features within the culvert to ensure that materials are captured and retained. I wanted to point out this particular report completed by our Washington office Aquatic Organism Passage Design Team in 2015 provides great recommendations for suitable and unsuitable locations for the application of a simplified design method, as well as suggestions for assessment, design, and construction of simplified design sites to improve their success. One additional outcome of this assessment was the development of a Tongass interdisciplinary design team consisting of a hydrologist, fisheries biologist, and engineer to provide the range of skills required for AOP crossing design, review, and monitoring efforts.
Hey, Sheila, I just wanted to give you a time warning. Thanks.
How much do I have?
2 minutes if you could, but take your time.
Perfect. This will be this, okay. All right, I believe this is my last slide. The red crossing removal shown in these photos was completed in Yakutat using funding from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service through the Tongass Top 5 initiative, along with help from the city and borough of Yakutat. This ghost culvert was part of a relic military roadbed abandoned after World War II, and apparently there's a whole lot of that out there. The Center Creek crossing is located in the upper Lost River drainage, and this crossing was restored to a natural grade with stream banks. Coho salmon, as well as additional pink salmon and cutthroat trout, have begun to use that upper Lost River upstream of the former culvert crossing, improving anadromous fish access to the upper half-mile Center Creek. Removing the culvert also restored hydrologic function upstream and downstream of the crossing. And it turns out that not just salmon are benefiting from the removal. You can see in the lower picture that other species are also enjoying the site. Again, a great, very low cost opportunity to address remediation. And I really want to pay a big thank you to all our partners who collectively help address fish habitat fragmentation issues across Southeast Alaska. To borrow a quote from Ian, teamwork makes the stream work. And this is definitely the case for AOP work in Southeast Alaska, especially on the Tongass. So really appreciate all of these entities who have forwarded our work across around the years. I did want to say just I have a ton more slides in the back, but I cut my presentation to meet the time constraints. But I did want to say that, we are planning. I really enjoyed that, the video from Jess talking about gradation mixing and washing and fines, that construction piece. We're planning to do a Construction 101 videography this summer in Hoona with a suite of partners. And I'm really excited about Ian talked about all of the training opportunities and workforce development. The Southeast Alaska Sustainability Strategy really puts impetus on this. And there's a lot of great things in the makings, including funding for trainings. And, he talked about AOP passage assessments. And we're even talking about AOP construction techniques as some of those opportunities to prepare local entities, including the tribes for, more project implementation opportunities across the forest. So exciting times in that regard, and great things in the works. So appreciate the time, and I am here for questions or whatever. Thanks.